offered one amendment in conjunction with Council President Waldron that had asked to, or had proposed moving $50,000 from our non-utility capital fund that is currently allocated for street overlays. And I had requested the idea of moving $50,000 towards potential improvements at the Rose Garden, and I can explain to you a little bit about my rationale there. I had looked at, through our non-utility capital improvement project detail, when I had looked at the different projects that had come in front of us. We obviously have talked before about the need for recreation and parks, and and I know that there's a lot in there for different things having to do with some of our other parks, Memorial Pool, things like that. We had heard, I think all of us have spoken before positively about the Rose Garden project over there and some of the things that have been discussed before in the plan. And I thought $50,000 was a good number because I know we had heard at one of the council meetings that some of the improvements had been going to be a couple $100,000, but I also know that we don't really have any firm estimates as to what individual costs are going to be over there. So I thought that $50,000 was a good amount to match up to kind of the current state of where I believe potential improvements are over there, without any bids out, not necessarily talking about priorities. I think all of us have heard about the various things that both community members, the administration, members of council would like to see done over there, but it's a little bit early in the process. I also know that a lot of people have advocated for this, and I think that putting some city money into this now at I don't want to call it the beginning of the process, but I want to call it early in the process, shows the commitment of both city council and the administration to support a project that really is kind of the centerpiece of what you would consider to be the West Side Recreation or West Side Parks. It's located, I don't have a map in front of me, but it's fairly centralized as far as the West Side is concerned. There's a lot of potential for improvement. Obviously, we've all heard about all of the different things that go on there, whether or not it's the community market or some of the other recreation, things like that. So I thought $50,000 was a good start as far as a commitment, but also matched the fact that it's early on in the process, and I know we have a lot of other important projects. I looked at street overlays, and I understand we spend a lot of time talking about the need to repave streets. Just adding up between CDBG, the Nuki, liquid fuels, I think we have over $2 million, about $2.2 million there. As far as those three sources alone, not including our internal paving costs. So I thought $50,000 out of our non-utility capital was the best place for that necessarily to come from. Thank you, Mr. Waldron. At this point, I will take any questions from any member of council or anybody from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I'm not sure if the administration wants to add anything to that, but I'll just add a couple things. If you look at that line item, it's on 278 in the non-utility capital fund. Towards the top there, under Public Works, for streets, you have street overlays, and you see that it's broken down into several columns, with a good portion in the 2019 bond, as well as the casino transfer tax that has a $1.2 million line item in it as well, so that is up to over $2.8 million. So obviously $50,000 would be missed, because that's $50,000 that doesn't go to streets, and it wouldn't be unheard of if you wanted to increase that number, because I think during our budget hearing, Mr. Alcala talked about his number of about $15 million to bring our streets up to where he'd like to see them. So even though that number is pretty substantial, it's still not quite what we need to take care of our streets to the point where everyone would like to see them. However, I think $50,000 does show a good faith effort on the city, from city council as well as the administration, that they are committed to this project in the West Side at the Rose Garden because of its large impact that it could have. Well, granted, $50,000 doesn't do a lot for the streets. It doesn't do nothing, clearly, but I think $50,000 could have a very good positive impact and create some really good momentum in this project at the Rose Garden. So that would be my rationale for supporting that as well. I guess at this point we'd probably have to make a motion in a second before we open it up to discussion. So, Mr. Reynolds, would you like to formalize that?
Yeah, I would like to make the motion then to move $50,000 from our non-utility street overlays line item into a $50,000 line item for Rose Garden improvements.
So moved.
That would be two separate votes. One we'd have to reduce and the other we'd have to increase. So we'd have to separate those two things. We could probably include all the discussion under one of the motions. So if you want to do the addition first.
President Walker, can I just ask for a clarification before the motion's made about which area on page 278, which you directed us to. Street overlays has $1 million out of the, when you're saying 50,000 coming out of street overlays, $1 million is in the bond. The other area you could take it from would be the casino transfer tax at 1.2 million. That's all contingent on the sale moving through.
Yes.
That's right. If it doesn't happen, projects in that column would not happen. Right.
Right.
So if you just indicate which line you would want it to move out of.
I guess my question back to you is, do we have to?
From a budget perspective in the financial system, we do. We'll just need to know for that.
Yeah.
I think we should take it out of the street overlays, out of the 2019 bond, because we don't know when that casino transfer tax is going to occur.
Correct. Yeah. If you look at the bond, then you guarantee it was going to happen.
Yeah.
If it's a must-have and you want that to happen, you guarantee it. If you think it's based on the sale, which.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about it, can you touch on the other funds column of 532,000 roughly?
532 is mostly that's going to be liquid fuels. Yeah. And CDBG. That's a lump sum of those two for 2 years. Or no, 1 year. 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. The bond is that $1 million of bond is for 2 years of paving, so we only borrow every other year. But the liquid fuels and the CDBG combined to make up that 532 of other funds. We get that funding annually, and it's allocated annually based on council's vote.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
So then, in the liquid fuels portion of the budget, I think we have $507,000
Correct.
for listed for street overlays,
Correct, and then.
and CDBG has $650, right?
Well, I'm looking at, on page 283, if you look at, breaks it out a little bit more for non-utility, you'll see the 507, 678 that you referenced for liquid
Okay.
fuels, and then it shows the 25,000 for CDBG. Now again, remember, some of those numbers are estimates. We always come back, CDBG and liquid fuels funds are two of the funds we always come back to Finance Committee in February and adjust based on actual year-end balances.
So then, is there overlap between liquid fuels and street overlays? Because the number on 311 under CDBG project detail, which I'm just apologizing then if I got that number wrong. So the number then on page 311 for street overlays for CDBG project detail is 653,944.
Yeah, that could just be a timing issue, and it's based on what we get from department heads for that line. Obviously, you would go by what's in this on page 311, as opposed the numbers on page 283 or a non-utility capital fund for liquid fuels and CDBG are informational only. But what council actually approves for CDBG is on page 311, as you indicated. So sometimes it's just a timing difference based on when one budget was done versus another. To be honest with you, I don't even know why we, I had this discussion with Eric last week, why we even show other funds in non-utility capital. Because sometimes it gets confusing because they're shown, elsewhere. I'd rather just show the money that's being allocated from non-utility capital.
So then the CD.
Clarify one thing on 311.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the specifics, but that's not for paying the 653. There's also included in the number, if you read under street overlays funding for street reconstruction, Carlton specifically, for whatever reason, few years back, they started lumping paving streets with sidewalk projects. And that's why that says 653, it's nowhere near that. The most accurate thing is, we're down to 25,000 a year in CDBG money for paving.
Okay, I think it was just, it's that confusing thing then on 311. So, but street reconstruction and street pavings are two different things.
Correct.
So street reconstruction,
Reconstruction is Carlton, we're redoing the sidewalks, upgrading utilities, redoing trees, and reconstructing the street.
Okay.
And then basically tearing that up and reconstructing it.
gotcha, okay,
That's not for paving.
okay. Thank you. Mr. Waldron, I would still, as I said, I would think it from the 2019 bond,
Okay.
rather than the casino transfer tax, just because we don't know when that's gonna come through, how much of that's gonna be, and I do not want to, I don't want to advocate for this transfer and then necessarily turn around and say, we have to wait to the uncertainty of that to come through.
Okay, at this point, I'd ask if you could withdraw your previous motion, and then we could start with the reduction of 50,000
Yes,
from that?
I will withdraw my previous motion, and I will make a motion to reduce our non-utility capital improvement project budget by $50,000 from the street overlays line
For the 2019
for the
bond?
2019 bond.
Second. The motion has been made by Mr. Reynolds and seconded by Mr. Cologne. Discussion? Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I love the idea. As a matter of fact, Alicia, have we gotten any word or mayor from Lehigh County on any grants or anything at all?
Not to my knowledge.
I know I talked